So we had to move from one spot in the library to another. Before we moved, we started discussing. Perfect example under Sean's administration, the Common Council passed probably one of the strictest code enforcement policies in the Capital District, which I have yet to see be utilized. I live on Devlin Street. There's a total of 10 buildings on Devlin Street. 2 of them have been condemned by the city. How do you see the city moving forward? And how does the land bank taking properties, they took one of the properties and they've done nothing with it. It sits there. In the neighborhood's opinion, the house should be torn down. It's falling apart. In our opinion, residents' opinion, it's in disrepair in the Orchard. The Orchard neighborhood, it's very small. We all get along. We're like literally a huge, well, not I won't say huge, but a small community. It's like a big family up there. How do you think codes should go forward with that? And do you agree with the fire department being oversight for codes? Because before we did have a person in City Hall that was, directly.
Well, you have a very complex issue here when you're talking about abandoned properties. The issue is, if you have a property, let's say it's quote unquote abandoned. Now, what does that mean, abandoned? What's the definition of abandoned? We'll say, for the sake of argument, the definition of abandoned is that, let's say it's been foreclosed on by a bank, maybe it's boarded up. Okay. The problem is that that's owned. It's private property, it's owned by a bank. Or it's owned by a property owner who is continuing to pay their taxes on the property. This is America.
Right.
This isn't Cuba, this isn't China. We just can't go in and take your property because we don't like the way it looks. Now, there's a second argument to that. If there's a property that's, quote, creating a public safety situation, then the city is within their rights to condemn the property and demolish the property. But here's the problem with that. Your average demolition is going to cost $50, $60, if there's asbestos.
It could be $100,000.
Won't get into the Main Street issue, but there's properties there that you have asbestos, you have to do the abatement. Now you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars that the taxpayers have to pay, and there's no guarantee you're going to recoup that from the bank or the property owner. You can go into litigation, for years. I think there's a property up on Leach Street, or Valley Boulevard, that the neighbor had come down to. I think it was last year. He came down to one of our meetings and says, Mayor, guys, is this property here? And Sean was there and says, well, it's current on the tax. We can't, if we go in and demolish it, we declare a public safety, and maybe I haven't seen the property. Maybe there is a public safety issue. Maybe there's not. Let's say that there was. Well, that's it's $50,000. If we do that. That adds up quickly. The city doesn't have the funding or the resources to just go around and demolish properties. So I think we have to take it, really on a case-by-case basis to say, what are the true public safety emergencies? I think they had one on Columbia Street, near Power Tank. So, a couple of these buildings were torn down, and rightly so. The state passed the zombie property law. Whether it's done any good, I don't know. I think it's still a work in progress. And it's not just Cohoes, obviously. A lot of, you go through Lansingburg, you drive through Troy, you're going to see burnt out buildings that have been burnt down for 5, 6, 7 years. Right. Why are they burnt out? Well, because the city doesn't have the resources to go in at their cost, at the taxpayers, and tear them down. Because the property owner, he takes the insurance. His house burns down. Most of the time, if it's a rental property, he's probably an out-of-town. He or she is probably an out-of-town landlord. So your house catches fire, it burns down, it's a loss. Mm-hmm. Well, you're not gonna. Well, geez, I'm gonna. No, you're gonna take that money and you're out of here, and you're not gonna pay the demolition cost. You're just, because what do you care? You don't live in the neighborhood. You don't care. So that's what we're faced with too. So there's a lot of complex issues that go into these, abandoned buildings. Now, yeah, you can have aggressive code enforcement. You can write all the tickets in the world, but if the person doesn't pay, And if they're out of food, why are you going to make them pay? You're going to send a summons to court? Well, they're not going to come. So, it's just a very, very difficult thing in all cities to deal with these abandoned properties. But you're right. Hopefully, we did pass the legislation. I think, at least in terms of getting for garbage, and getting folks to follow the rules as far as when to put the garbage out, not to have the garbage spilling out over the thing, and putting trash out, and putting your own mattress out on the curb, and just think it's going to get picked up. So those are the things I think have gotten better, especially in some of the neighborhoods downtown and on the island where we have the alleyways, and the alleys can become full of junk and garbage, and then you get the rodents and the skunks and all these things. So I think we've done a better job, there. But then as far as the vacant buildings, that's.
Do you think code enforcement should go back to being outside of the fire department?
Well, look, I think Chief Fod has done a great job.
Yeah, I'm by no means am I disparaging Chief Fod.
Currently we have a position. It's called the Commissioner of Building and Planning, and that position is vacant.
It's been vacant for some time, hasn't it?
It's been vacant for some time. So that'll be upon the new administration to decide. Okay, do I want to fill that position? But now it's going to come at a cost, because now right now Chief Fod's doing it basically, for nothing. Thanks.
He's doing two jobs for.
Thanks, Joe. And who, by the way, I think and I have to really.
Great guy.
I want to speak on this. I think the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard is the fact that the incoming administration says that, well, Chief, you can't take your car home, your fire chief's car, because it's too much of a cost for taxpayers. I think this is the most absurd thing I've ever heard.
I'd have to disagree with that.
The guy drives an 8-year-old Chevy Impala with like 100,000 miles on it. The guy lives in Albany. He doesn't live in Spoon Lake. He's been our chief for 15, 16 years. I know some people in the fire department don't like him for whatever reason, and I'm not carrying chief's water because he can carry his own water. But to me, as a matter of public safety, if there's an incident in the city of Cohoes, if my mother's
like
house,
the Remsen Street fire.
Remsen Street fire. If my mother's house is on fire, God forbid, or God forbid anybody's house is on fire in the middle of the night, I want my fire chief to be able to respond to that fire in the quickest manner possible. And if you're going to tell me that it's too much of a cost to taxpayers to have an 8-year-old Chevy Impala go back and forth to Albany, I think that's just ridiculous. And you don't understand the fire service, and you don't understand emergency services to say that the chief should not be able to respond. And if that's your way of trying to push the chief out, I think that's.
I know that
I think that's absurd.
I know there's towns and cities here in New York State, all over the U.S., that allow fire chiefs and assistant chiefs to take cars home. They allow police officers to take their cars home, which I think is a great idea.
Well,
I mean,
I think
City of Cohoes, I think in the past 3 weeks has gotten 3 mutual aid calls from police departments outside of the city.
I mean, look, this is picayune stuff. This is you're talking about savings to the taxpayers. If you want to save to the taxpayers, let's go through the city budget.
Line by line.
We'll really start saving money. Give me the box of red pens, and we'll really start saving money. But I am not going to jeopardize public safety. And we figured, I did the math on it. With the gas, the vehicle depreciation cost, it was at most $2,000 a year for him to drive that car, quote, personal use to his home in the city of Albany and back. I mean, to me, $2,000 a year out of $20 million to have a fire chief who is the most knowledgeable, who has 50 years in the fire service. I think he has over a quarter century as a command officer in the fire service, to be able to respond to our city, to me is, I don't know. And if you don't want him to be the chief, then that's a whole nother argument. But he's the chief we have. He's the chief we have now. He may not be the chief. Look at everybody. You weren't here, Ray Lamora. Yeah, everybody, okay, Ray Lamore, and he was in the city, and okay, well, you know, that's different. That was a different time. We don't have Ray Lamore. We have Joe Fod. And if you don't want Joe Fod, and if you want something else, and that's a whole other argument, but until Joe Fod is not there,
Joe Fodd's the chief.
Joe Fod is the chief, and Joe Fod should be able to respond to the calls. I apologize for kind of going off on that.
No,
but it's been
that's
really.
listen. Honestly, this is what these are for. Is because you guys serve our city. You guys are the voice of our residents. You have your own constituents that come to you and they voice their concerns and their opinions to you, just like every other council member. And what the focus of these interviews is to allow you to be heard, regardless if you're going off on a rant or a tangent on something that you feel that you have emotion for. That's what this is for. Is because I want people to understand where you're coming from and where all the other members are coming
Well, I
from.
just think it's important. I think a lot of these things, the public should have an awareness on, and that's always been my MO for the last decade that I've kind of been involved in Cohoes, politics and this type of thing. I think information is never a bad thing.
No, they got to be informed. So since we're talking about departments, let's go through some departments and give your honest thoughts and opinions on either what they need, what they don't need. Since we're already on the fire department, we'll start with the fire department. They just got a beautiful $500,000
More than that, more
tower.
than that.
Was it more than that?
Oh, yeah.
I thought I saw $550,000 somewhere.
Well, it's a lease, and I think it's a 7-year lease. And
Beautiful
it's about
truck.
It's just over. It's going to cost taxpayers just over $100,000 a year. So we're looking at, after 7 years, a little over $700,000. And just like your car, if you lease a car,
You can either buy it or turn it back in.
you can either purchase the then 7-year-old truck, or you can just turn it in, get a brand new truck, and just keep on paying that payment. Now, there's an argument on both sides to that. Some argument will say, well,
Elaborate to another. So